Okay, welcome to part 2 of making this little man. So far in part 1 this is where we got to, and now we'll start looking at kind of what's left here. So the next thing we'll work on would be the details on the ears. So let's kind of knock those out now. So what we'll do is we're going to take this little line segment tool, you can see it here in your toolbar, and we're just going to make a little line segment going across like that. Now most likely yours looks like this, where it doesn't have any color to it yet. The reason is, so far everything we have made has had a fill color, meaning an inside color with no stroke. If I click on a shape here, you can kind of see we have a fill color. It's filled in with no outline around it. Now this line is a little bit different. It has a fill color at the moment, but we really want the stroke color, this outline color, because it's just a line. We want that line to have its own color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by eyedropping the color of the ear. So now this line is the same color as the ear. Next, I'm going to flip-flop here so that now the stroke of this line is the same color as the ear. Now that might seem kind of silly because if we look at it now, it blends into the ear. Obviously we can't see it yet. But the reason I'm doing that, I want to make this line a little bit darker than the ear. So now that it's the exact same color as the ear, it's much easier for me to double click on this stroke with this line selected. And I can make it a little bit darker, so I'm going to go down and to the right a little bit. That's going to make it a little darker and a little more saturated. A little bit more of that color is going to show. So I'm going to hit OK. It's there now, but it's very hard to see. It's small. So let's change that. We're going to select this line with our black arrow tool. We're going to increase the size of the stroke. There's no correct number to this. You just kind of got to decide what you think looks right. Alright, now we have this line. But you can see it's kind of like flat on the end. You see the one I have here is a nice round edge on it. So let's do that. Again, with the line selected, I'm going to click on the word stroke at the top this time. This is going to pull up more options. First thing I'd like to change is I want to put a cap on this line. That gives me that nice rounded portion. Next, I am, you know what, I think we'll just leave that one just like that. So that's good like that. So that one's done. We'll look at some more of the settings in here later as we work, but for this one I think that's good. Alright, next I'm going to just rearrange mine a little bit here. I just want this thing just a little bit smaller, so I'm going to shrink that a little bit. I'm not too concerned about this side of it because I'm never going to see that. So I'm just kind of playing around here and getting this kind of exactly where I want it. Alright, so now what I want to do is make a copy of this and have it flip. So here's what I'll do. I'll right click with this thing selected. I'll just right click on my screen somewhere and I'm going to go to Transform Reflect. It doesn't really matter for this one whether I pick vertical or horizontal. We're kind of going to get the same thing. But here's the key. I'm not going to hit OK because what that would do is that would just reflect that line that I had. I'm going to instead hit copy. That's going to leave the original line alone and make a copy of it that's reflected. So now I have this nice little X for my ear. The only problem is it's in front of my face. I don't want that. I want it to be behind the face. So what I need to do is I need to take these lines. So if I select it, I can see a little box next to it here indicating that this is the one that I just selected. I need to move it down in my layers below the face but above the ears. If I don't see this layers window, I would just go to Window, Layers to make it pop up. Also, when you open that layers window, you might notice it looks like this. You just hit the little arrow to open it up. So here's this one that I need to move down. I'm going to just start moving it. The blue line indicates where it's going, so I can see I still need to go more, and there we go. It's on top of this ear, but behind this face that's here, and that's why that works. So it's sort of like just like stacking construction paper. And there we go. So I got that one. All right, now that this ear is done, I don't want to do that again. I want the two to be the same. I'm going to copy this to the other side. So I held Shift while I selected both of them. I'm going to hold Option while I drag this thing over. And I'm just going to place it kind of like the other one there until I feel like that's appropriate. And you can see mine's actually put behind the ear for this one. So I'm going to select these pieces. Or the other option is I can take this ear on mine and move it back. So I'm going to do Arrange, Send it back for that ear. That's the same as me dragging it all the way to the bottom of my layers, that ear. And now this shows up. Now I can take these two and kind of adjust them. So again, all I'm doing is I'm just rearranging things in my layers and just trying to get kind of what I feel like looks right for this. So there's the ear detail. Next, let's work on the mouth. So the mouth, we're going to bring in a new tool we haven't seen yet. It's called the Shape Builder tool. So the mouth, first we'll make that half circle, and it starts with an ellipse. So either L on your keyboard or the toolbar has it in there as well. So there's my ellipse. I'm going to give this thing some kind of fill color that would make sense for the inside of the mouth. So first I'm going to tell it that I don't want to stroke on this, and I do want to fill color. So I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to pick a color. I'm going to go with a red that's like almost black for mine. This is the inside of my mouth. Think of your mouth like a cave. We're looking into that cave right now. So there's my color for that. Almost black, real deep red. It can be black, it can be more red. It's up to you. I want to cut this circle almost in half. Now the way I'm going to do that is actually with a rectangle. Now this rectangle I'm going to delete later. To get to my rectangle tool, you see it's right here in the toolbar when I hold down, or I could hit M on my keyboard, would also jump me to that. Just for the sake of making this easy for you to see, I'm going to change the color of this rectangle. It's completely unnecessary because I'm going to delete that rectangle in a moment, but it'll just make it easier for you to see what's going on. So Shape Builder. There's two phases to using Shape Builder. The first phase is to select anything you want to mess with. Well, what I mean by that is I'm messing with these two shapes right now. That's the easiest way to think of that. So I'm going to hold Shift and select both of these shapes. And now I'm going to find my Shape Builder tool. It's this one right here. Shift and the letter M will get you there. Now Shape Builder can join different shapes together, and it can also delete chunks of shapes, delete parts of shapes that overlap each other, as long as those shapes are selected. Now, whether or not you have them selected correctly can be determined by looking to see if you hover your mouse over these shapes with Shape Builder, you'll see these gray dots pop up. That tells you selected them correctly. Alright, so I said Shape Builder can do two things. It can join things, and that's the mode this tool is in right now. It has a plus sign next to it. It wants to join chunks of things together. So if I were to like drag a line with this, it would join all that together. Now that's not what I want in this case. I want to delete chunks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard. That switches it from a plus to a minus. So I'm still holding down Option. Now I can either drag or just click on the chunks that I want to go away, and there's the mouth. So now I'm going to do the same thing to finish up the mouth here. If we look at this finished one, it's a circle that I cut off a majority of, and then it's a rectangle that I rounded this corner and again cut off a bunch of that. So let's make those. So first I'm on my rectangle tool. Let's do the teeth, I guess, since I'm here. I'm just going to make a rectangle that looks something like this. It just needs to hang out past the mouth. I'm going to make this white, or like an off-white, yellowish, brownish color. If I want perfect white, I could just click over here in the default white and get rid of the stroke. But I want to go maybe just a little bit of color on this thing. I don't want to do too much color here. It's going to look kind of odd and like the person drinks too much coffee or chewing tobacco or something. So there's the color of my teeth. I might even go a little bit whiter for that. Alright, there's the color of my teeth. I said I wanted to round this corner a little bit, so I'm going to go to my selection tool and I'm going to grab this little circle. That's going to round all four corners because I'm using my black arrow, which selects the entire thing. And that's okay because I'm going to end up deleting these other three corners anyway. How much you round this is up to you. I'll look at that. That might be too much of a round. I'm just going to shrink that back down a little bit. Alright, so I like that. I'm good with that. Alright, now before I even cut this, I'm going to go ahead and do the mouth. So I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to give that a nice red color for the tongue. I think I'm probably something like that for my tongue. You can make your tongue any color that you think would look good. And now I'm going to move this shape into place. So I'm basically looking at what's going to be inside of here. That's what my focus is. Alright, now Shape Builder. Again, two phases. Phase 1, select all the parts that you may want to mess with. Now that I've selected them, phase 2 is to actually take the Shape Builder tool. So I'm going to take this. Again, I'm going to be deleting, so I want to hold Option, and I'm going to click on these chunks that need to go away. Now I'm done. I'm going to switch back to my selection tool. I want to move this mouth into place, so to make that easy, I'm going to select all three parts of this by holding Shift. Now I could move it the way it is, but in case I want to move this mouth again, and I don't want to keep picking all three parts, I'm going to right-click and go to Group. That sort of temporarily ties everything together. It makes it so that whenever I click on one part of this thing, all three parts get clicked on. There are still ways I can go in and change the colors of these pieces and modify those pieces in general, but that just makes it easy to select everything. So now I'm going to just kind of look at this face and start playing around with the mouth and deciding what that should look like. So you see I twisted mine a little bit. The way I did that is I just kind of went outside that corner so I can twist it. Maybe I'll grab this and shrink it a little bit. If I want to keep my proportions, I would hold shift, but maybe I want to make this thing a little taller, a little wider, so I don't necessarily need to. So there's my mouth on this one, kind of making it look like he's talking out of the side of his mouth. Alright, so next step on this, let's take care of the eyebrows. All that's really left is the eyebrows, this little beard, and the hair. So the eyebrows, they're going to start life as a line segment. Doesn't have to be a straight line, you know, straight across. You can kind of go on a little angle like I did either way. And now we're going to take our direct selection tool. Remember, this one lets us pick parts of things. And before I really start messing with this, I should give this a color just so I don't accidentally lose it. Mine has no fill, no stroke. So I'm going to pick, I don't know, some kind of color for hair. Whatever color you want. I'll go with a brown on this guy. Alright, so now I have this color. I can take this direct selection tool and I can click on either end of this line. There's two anchors, two dots that make up this line. I'm going to click on one of them and I'm going to hit this button right here. Now if you don't see this at the top, it means you haven't used your white arrow to click on one end of the line. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Not even worried about what that curve looks like right now. I'm just clicking on this and adding these little things. So these little handles, I call these arms, allow us to kind of curve the line in any way we wish. So now we're starting to get something. As you play around, you know, if you're not like me, you don't draw characters, you know, you're not real good at this like art type stuff. Sometimes playing around with these things is the best way to figure out like kind of what expression you want this thing to have and what you want this to look like. I may come back and play with this more, but right now it's just so skinny it's kind of hard to look at. So what I want to do is I want to take my black arrow tool and I want to click on this thing. As I do that, I can get to the stroke window. Now we're going to look at some of these additional features. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to click on the stroke window. I'm going to increase the size. Now I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to click somewhere else. I can also probably move. You can't move this window that way. So I'm just going to change the size of it here. There's other ways to access that stroke window, but we don't need to get into those right now. Alright, so that's good to start. Again, no specific size for this. Maybe I'll even go a little bigger. You just got to decide what you want your eyebrows to look like. Now we're going to click on this stroke window. I'm going to move this artwork a little bit so we can see. And I'm going to first put a cap on it like we did before. And again, it's already looking better. But eyebrows aren't such a uniform width in real life. They kind of get bigger and smaller. So I'm going to mess with this profile thing. Again, another one where there's no right answer here. You just kind of click on them and decide what you think looks right for yours. Everybody's project's a little bit different. You have to decide what you like. Now say you like this, but you wish it was going the opposite way. This button flip-flops those profiles. So far, I kind of like just this one for mine. And again, you might find something different that you like. There's a bunch of them in there to try. So let's say once I'm happy with this, again, I could take direct selection. I could keep messing with this thing. I could change the size of the stroke still to make this thing bigger or smaller. And that's, again, just going back, selecting this thing with the black arrow, and I can mess with the stroke. Alright, so let's say I'm happy with that one. I'm going to take this one, hold Option with my selection tool, and drag. Again, letting go of my mouse before I let go of Option. That's what makes the copy. Alright, now I might like this the way it sits with both his eyebrows going that way. I might want to mirror this thing. If I want to mirror it, simply right click with it selected, transform, reflect. I'm going to need to do vertical this time. I'm not going to hit copy because I don't need an additional eyebrow. I just want to hit OK. And now again, I can take direct selection. I probably don't want these to match each other perfectly. I want something going on here where it looks like he's kind of like up to something. He's thinking, he's talking. And you just kind of mess around till you get what you like. Maybe, ooh, I'm going to undo that. Command Z is undo. You can also go to Edit Undo at the top. And I'm just going to play. Maybe I like that for now, just for the sake of speeding this up. You know, I like that. It kind of looks like he's raising one eyebrow, so I'm going to just lower this other one just a bit. So these are all things you play with. I'm using my arrow keys once I select this thing just to nudge it a little bit. Maybe he's kind of thinking like that. There you go. So I like that. Alright, let's look at doing the hair. Alright, so as far as the hair goes, it starts life, believe it or not, as a rectangle. So I'm going to make a rectangle that kind of covers the head. You see it's a little bit wider than the head on each side, a little bit taller. As far as the bottom, it can just kind of end somewhere near the chin. I'm going to give this thing a fill color. If I want it to match the eyebrows, I can do that. I'm just going to take the eyedropper here and just make sure I'm on that exact same color. Now that matched, if you notice the width of the stroke and everything, I'm not going to need a stroke, so that's not going to matter, but you see it kind of copies all of those properties when you eyedrop. So I had that rectangle selected, I eyedropped the eyebrow. Now I'm going to flip-flop this so that this has a fill. Alright, now with this thing selected, I need this all the way at the bottom of my layer. So rather than drag it down in my layers window, I'm just going to right click on this with it selected and go to Arrange, Send to Back. I'm going to fine tune the size of this, again just going a little bit wider than the head and a little bit taller. What this is for, this is going to form this portion that you see here, this little bit of hair around the sides. I'm going to go to the corner here and I'm going to drag in, and I can kind of see what's happening now. So I want to kind of match the shape of the head, and there we go. So it looks a lot more like Mr. Arena now. It looks like a balding old man. Now yours may have like an Amish looking beard on this thing like this. We don't want that, obviously. So here's how we get rid of this. If we just shrink up the bottom with the black selection tool, you see there we go. Alright, so we got the beginnings of hair. Next I want to do this little poof on the top and this little hair flip thing. So I'll show you how that works. So first, let's make a rectangle for the top. And don't stress out about the size of your rectangles. You can always adjust them. We can always go back with our selection tool and just kind of move things, make sure it's centered, make things wide or tall or whatever. We can change all that. I want to round all four corners of this. I'm going to do them all the same, so I'm just going to stick with this black arrow and go ahead and round this thing. You can decide how much. Maybe you want it totally round. I'm taking mine pretty close to round this time. And there's the top of the head. Now, big addition here is this little poof. Now you can see on mine, I feel like it just needs to go a little bit wider, so I'm going to do that. I'm cheating here. I'm holding Option as I drag, and that's going to move both sides the same amount. And that just keeps this thing centered for me. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Next up is that little poof of hair on the top. So I'm going to make a circle. I'm holding Shift as I drag just to keep it a perfect circle. I really don't need to do that right now. An oval would work fine for this. But I'm going to make it a circle. I'm going to make a rectangle then that covers up the part of this that I want to delete. So if we look at this one, you can kind of see the parts that I deleted here. Let's see if I can get it to show up. There it is. So you can see that chunk I got rid of. So I'm just going to make a rectangle that, again, I'm going to be deleting. And I'm going to delete basically that quarter of the circle here with this rectangle. Again, color for the rectangle doesn't matter. It's going away in a second. Shape Builder, 2 phases. Phase 1, select the parts you want to shape build. Phase 2 is actually shift to the Shape Builder tool. Hold Option and delete. So when I selected these, I held Shift. Now that I'm on the Shape Builder, I'm going to hold Option, and again, that's the one that switches me to this minus thing where I can click on the chunks I'd like to go away. One last thing I'm going to do, this little hair poof, just a little detail thing. And I got this from a video on YouTube. The guy who does this is very talented. He's got a great eye for these little details. I'm selecting with the direct selection tool, the white arrow, this one top corner here, and I'm just going to round that edge slightly. That just gives that just a little more detail when this thing's done, just makes it look more finished. I'm going to put this in place, and I'll probably need to change the size of it. That's fine. That's part of this. So I'll probably line that up at the bottom, but I actually kind of like that coming down a little bit. So I'm going to just kind of play here and see what I like. Maybe I'll make this thing a little smaller for me. Alright, so that looks kind of good. The only thing better than one little hair poof thing is 2. So I'm going to take this shape with my selection tool, hold Option, copy it, and shrink it. And just kind of look at it and see if I like that. So I like that. Maybe I'll make this one skinnier. Again, it's just a feel thing. Just look at it and see what you like. So there we go. So all that's left now is his little 5 o'clock shadow, and this guy's done. So to do that, I'm going to make an oval. If you notice, I still have the same fill color here. That's going to work out nicely for me. If I didn't, I could always eyedrop, but I'm going to make this oval. I'm going to move this to where I think the shadow should be. Well, as far as the 5 o'clock shadow for a beard, it would be kind of right below the nose. Think like where the mustache is. That would be the top of your shadow. Now my face in mine is a little bit twisted to the side because I have the mouth over here. So that's why I'm also kind of twisting this circle a little bit. Something we haven't looked at yet, it's called opacity. So what I'm going to do is I have this selected. Now my screen's a little bit too narrow right now to see this, so I'm going to just spread this out. So there we go. At the top, with this selected, I can lower the opacity. The opacity means how see-through is something. Well, you have to play with this number to get a feel for what looks right to you as far as a 5 o'clock shadow. I'm thinking maybe a little darker today. Something like that. There we go. So here's his little skinny beard. Now, first thing, I got to cut off this excess, and then we're going to have to mess around with our layers because this beard right now is covering the teeth and the tongue and all that. So first, let's use Shape Builder to clean this up. So I'm going to have this circle selected, and I'm also going to hold Shift and pick this shape because that's the one that I want to kind of trim this to. I go to Shape Builder, both shapes selected, I'm good to go. I hold Option, I click on the part I want to go away. Now I have this thing, which is great, but like I said, it's covering the mouth. It's covering the nose. So I got to rearrange things. So I'm going to take this shape and just start moving it down. Now again, this light blue line that pops up tells me where I'm putting this thing. So if I start dragging this down, you can see there I moved it too far because I can't see it anymore. It's behind the face. I'm going to go up a little bit, and eventually I'll figure out it's got to go right there. So it's behind the nose, in front of this, and you know, whoops. Now if you double click it all, that's what I did here. I just hit escape to get out of that. So I'm just going to move this a little bit, just kind of fine tune. So at this point you could just adjust. You see I added this little cheek detail here, you know, and I figure his like mouth is kind of up, so his cheek's going to be raised a little bit on this side. So all these little details, again, a lot of this I got from that YouTube video, but you know, kind of play around with this, make it your own, but this is it. At this point, you're ready to turn this thing in. So to turn these in, what you would do is, let me get this other old copy out of the way. The only things I'm going to see are the things that are on your sheet of paper. So I'm going to highlight everything on here. I'm going to look at this sheet of paper now. So I highlighted everything. I'm looking at this sheet of paper. I highlighted it with the selection tool. I want to move this thing so it's centered, and I also want it to kind of fill the page. So I'm going to just hold Shift here and kind of make it fill the page nicely. So first impressions are a big thing. When I first grade these, I can't help but subconsciously look at this and see whether or not it's centered. Plus, it is graphic design. You want these things to look good when you turn them in. So make sure it fills the page nicely, it's centered, and again, to do that, selection tool, just drag a big box around everything. You can now drag this bigger or smaller. If you want to keep it in proportion, you can hold Shift. That forces it to stay in proportion. And then you just kind of move it around to whatever you feel like looks centered. All right, now to turn this in, we can do this in a couple ways. You might want to ask me if this policy has kind of changed as far as how we're saving things. For this one, what I had the class do was we went to File, Export, and let's export this for screens. This is a newer feature in Illustrator. It's a little bit of a pain to get used to, but it does work well. So you know what, I'm going to cancel that. There's one setting I wanted to make sure that I did right here. So export for screens. Let's see if it gives us this choice. You know what, this version is different than the version you may be looking at your computer. All I'm going to do here is uncheck Create Subfolder. As far as where I export to, I'm going to click this little thing and make it the desktop. Alright, so export to, I pick desktop, I uncheck Create a Subfolder. It's going to call this thing Artboard 1. I'm going to go ahead and export this. What that's going to do is this is going to make a picture copy of my project. So if I look at my desktop, here is that picture copy. It's almost like I took my cell phone out and took a picture of this thing. This plays much nicer with the internet and all these different programs that don't have Illustrator on them. So that's kind of the end of this thing. At this point, you'd be ready to turn this into Google Classroom. Again, that very last part where I exported it, you can ask me about that. We change from time to time how we're saving these things, so I might be doing that a different way with you guys now. All right, thanks for watching.